It says webinar is now streaming live.
That means we are streaming live. Hi, everybody at the What's On at Elephant and Castle Facebook page. I'm Nick, and this is Melissa. And how are you doing, Melissa?
I am, I'm okay. Had a rained morning walk with Mago, which was kind of nice. And now here I am. How are you?
The rain, yeah, I'm good. I mean, I think I get it. Like the weather, just the drastic changes and, well, drastic. It's just the change of seasons. And coming into the West End today, everyone's feeling a little bit glum. So yeah, I think glum is a good word to use today.
I see the sun coming, so.
Well, that's good for you. Also, you're preparing for your move to your new flat, buying yourself stuff online. Are you excited?
Well, I would be, except the card is not working. So it took a 10-minute project, took me 2.5 hours. So I'm annoyed.
Okay.
But here we go.
Yeah.
Those worse things to be annoyed about, or greater things.
Exactly. I mean, I also am thinking that I'm pretty darn grateful right now, just for everything that's happening. You know, for us to be able to do this talk today, which we've been, we've been working on for this last month, and it's, talking about what love looks like, and uncovering and discovering and communicating the ways we love. And for me, it's been a big journey. From what I grew up with on the idea of family love. And then also, like, growing up as a teenager, the ideas of romantic love. And then has someone who's been married twice, the idea of marriage love, to getting to the point now where, love means a lot. It means something a lot different to me today than it did a long time ago. It's almost changing on a day-to-day basis. So I'm kind of really excited to talk about what we've learned over the last month, but also your experience with regards to this big, heavy word that confuses an awful lot of people. But we've managed to kind of delve out some pretty cool definitions, I suppose, over the last month, and we can talk about that. We could talk about this journey. So I suppose, just in a nutshell, I like, just to start it off, how has kind of love language and the way you've been teaching these workshops and gatherings over the last month, what are the things that have kind of come up for you?
I think when you were talking, a lot of things were coming in my head. So give me a second to figure out what has come up in our gatherings and in our shared conversations. I think it's twofold, and it's interesting because I think the idea, like our first part was kind of the questioning and the remembering around, like, what was our first, I think, visualization or memory or interaction with love, right? And that, like, just love. And that was kind of like cool to have people share. Like, a lot of it went back to, like, some was witnessing their parents, some were watching a movie and seeing, like, a romantic love, a marriage. And I found it interesting that there was almost, like, no real memory of, or at least out loud, of, like, oh, the first time I loved myself, or an act of love. It was always this kind of external viewing, which is, I mean, obvious and normal and natural. But it was interesting to see, like, oh, I remember seeing this when I was 5. And then the more we talked and the more we questioned and reflected, we realized that first image, our memory, kind of shaped our understanding as we went forward. And then I think something seemed to happen and flip that. And then we've internalized it. We made meanings around it. And then the process was like that unbecoming of this notion of love. So I think that was super interesting to just reflect on, maybe, like, what our first memory of watching love in motion, or like our oh, that must be a love act or love. So that was kind of cool. I don't think I answered your question, but I think, yeah, that was a good conversation. So maybe I'll ask you, because I think my caffeine's kicking in and I'm having a hard time grappling things. Would you have a memory of your first, like, witnessing love, or what you would call love?
Yeah, for sure. And I think this came out in our workshops was, my first kind of real true feeling of love was my family unit. You know, in Canada, my mom and dad immigrated from the UK to, you know, this wee small town in the middle of prairie Canada, which is a very small town. And it was around Christmas times. And I would have probably been around 3 and 4 years old. These memories of just like my parents doing everything they could to make sure that our Christmases were just full of like presents and food and games and, you know, just being together, because it was just the five of us. I didn't have any grandparents or uncles or aunties or cousins, nephews or anything like that. To nephews, I would have been too young for that. But, you know, like any kind of family around us. So my parents really kind of going out of their way, and also having a feeling that, you know, we financially, I even at a young age, I knew my parents were doing everything they could, you know, to get us presents, to get us things to make us happy. So those are the tightness of our family unit, which is really kind of strange, because as you know, the family dynamics of mine were also very, very, very scary at sometimes too. So, but this kind of, throughout all of those scary times, it created a basis for me to know that through really dark times of my father, you know, drinking and being violent, Mel, I still knew he loved us, you know. And I think that I had that core belief, even though I was so scared of this man for so long. I never hated him, because I knew through the way that him and my mom like tried their best to prove to us that they could keep this little family alive and give us opportunities that we wouldn't normally be able to have, you know, in Canada. Because that's what it was. It was my dad trying to give us a different opportunity than growing up in a coal mining village in South Yorkshire. So that was my kind of the core essence, is that I knew that family meant love.
So how did you know he loved you? Like, I know you said there was like some like problematic relationships with his drinking, and then there was violence. So in the moments where you were scared and unsure, what did love look like? How did you remember the love? Like, what was your internal dialogue, or what did you call in or remember that he was loving you in his best ways?
I think it was just those kind of father-son moments that you have growing up with your father, you know, him teaching you how to drive on his knee out in the dirt tracks of the prairies, you know, like sitting on his knee and him giving you the wheel of the car, and sitting out in like farm fields, and him teaching me about, you know, like hay bales and birds and trees and bushes and stuff. So we just had this thing, like I say, like I mean, I know, and you know, like through my journey of being scared of my father, he tried to teach me these things about what a real man does. And I remember Mel, like I must have been about 12 years old, and we were sitting in a dirt track out in the middle of the wheat fields, and we had a pellet gun, and we were just shooting like old cans, you know. We were just sitting there just shooting targets, as you do. And he said, Nick, you know, my only job in life is to make you a better man than me. And I was 12 years old, you know. And I think that, to me, just like through all of the pain and the violence and everything like that, I knew at his core, he just wanted to give me an opportunity, because I knew he himself was very abused as a kid. And he went through a childhood that was very, very, it was full of some ups and downs too. And for him to say that, like, I think that was an act of love. But also with that, these learnings of what real men do, you know, a real man makes sure that his son is a better man than him, and is a provider and never borrows money and can always pay his way, and is strong and tough, and all these kind of things, which, because I believed him, those were the ideas of what. So love for me was about being this man that had to be better than my father, you know. And he was an amazing school teacher, and he influenced a lot of children, and he helped a lot of people in his life. And, you know, through me and my struggles my struggles as an adult growing up, you know, saying I'm not living up to what he did, you know. So that was a big thing on me about this idea of like, so my father loved me so that he can make me a better man than him, but I'm failing because I don't have the security, the financial security as a teacher who had a pension, who could retire when he was 55. I'm 49, I'm almost 50, and we're building a company. So things are different. So those are the things, the things that I've had to navigate around this idea of love and being a real man.
Almost like kind of, I think I just said the word unbecoming, but like we become this version. And then I think to get back to the version, we have to unbecome what we were taught, even though it was with the best intentions and the best, like to love as much as somebody is capable of loving. Because I think that's like such an important piece is, or at least for me, it invited so much freedom in my life when I was told, and I received this information that somebody's only able to meet you as deeply as you've met yourself. And if we flip that a bit, and even in the relationship, parent, child, guardian, child relationship, is like people are human, parents are human, even though, there's part of us thinking that they are superheroes and that they, there's this like knock in the head when we realize, they're actually only doing as best they can, and they are complex and they are layered. And this is the essence of this conversation around love, right? Like the way we express our love can be so different based on our environments, our upbringing, our understanding, our relations. Like it can be so different. So it feels like, there's like all these unbecomings of not only ourselves, but also what our expectations of our parents' role or our guardians' role, or just the caretakers in our lives role are, right? Because it's messed up.
How have you find this kind of the difference between people who identify as men and people who identify as women, and their different languages over what love has been with your own journey? How have you been able to kind of see the differences, but also the similarities in the things that we grow up with, and also in your journey of understanding what love is, and the dynamics between the patriarchy and the matriarchy?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I'll just run with ideas. Like, I think after the root of it all is that every one of us is looking for connection, is looking to be seen, is looking to be held and fully accepted for all the bits that we come with, right? And I think given how we have been nurtured to express that ourselves, can be shaped and expressed and in different ways. Some are limiting, some are internal, because it does require vulnerability. It does require, the risk at showing yourself, at being seen, and it requires like authenticity and reflection. And that doesn't happen overnight. That needs to be consciously nurtured and nourished. And so I think at the end of the day, regardless of whatever roads we've taken or has been thrown upon us, or environments that have shaped us, the core of it is I think the actual innate human need to feel connected. And we can call that love, like to feel part of something bigger than your own, like meaning making brain, right? It's like, I am not alone. I am worthy. I am whatever you want to finish that sentence with. So I think at the core of it, it's always like, we're just looking for ways to express this need to feel and want to be connected. Because sometimes it's hard for us to do it with ourselves, because that would be amazing if we all kind of were raised like having this, like, which we are, like born with this innate, I think, wisdom and beauty and just polished, fully shine. And then things happen and we get layered and dulled and all these things. And then we start the process of having people polish for us. and we learn how to polish it ourselves. So I think that's all. I think, ask me another question because I'm going to ramble.
What I was trying to get at was, what have you heard from women or younger, particularly younger women, and also men like me who've told you about, this idea of being the provider and the protector and almost being kind of like cold with regards to love, kind of this treat them mean, keep them keen thing, right? If I'm mean to her, she's going to love me more. And then with regards to women, that perhaps the things that they have to physically give of themselves to prove love to a man, which can be demeaning, it can be dangerous, it can, those kind of things. So there's the dynamics of like the male, female, of what they need to give to receive love.
So it's like this performative nature of what love is, right? And that based on the roles, the usually gendered roles that we're like thrown with, is we think that we have to perform a certain way to be receiving love, to be worthy of love. So that might mean, whatever harm or dysfunctional relationship, or, put yourself in your own sense of your shine, doll your own shine so that somebody else's can shine brighter than you, or like silence yourself. I mean, it's layered. This is not a kind of one size fits all answer for sure, but it's layered given the fact that there is a performance piece to being human. And if we take that as value and the essence of who we are, then that can really be in conflict with our own becoming and our own discovery, because there's this tension that we're up against. It's like, well, that person look like they're in a relationship, and if that's what I want, then I have to do what that person's doing in order to get what I think they're getting, right? And I mean, we know this with social media and all this kind of access to different resources. What's real, what's authentic, like what happens behind the scenes, like what happens when the other 50 shots that didn't make that one post, right? Like there's all these kind of manufacturing around this image that people can, in terms of the work I do, that people get locked in, like the expectation, the pressure, the comparison of what it is that happiness, love, relationship, tenderness needs to look like. So that's like, there's such a conflict in there based on our perceived notions of how we have to perform.
Yeah, and I think that the language around this is that and how selfish I used love, or if it was even love, but it was like this idea of I would do things for people, pay bills, buy presents, clean flats, whatever, because I wanted something back. So on the outside, I portrayed it as an act of love, but really it was complete and utter selfishness, because I was doing something because I wanted something in return.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I suppose the romantic ideas and notions of love developed in me in terms of relationships with women, was that I needed to do things to portray a certain image so that I could receive something back, because I was so insecure and feeling like I didn't recognize what the love was that they were giving me, unless it was praise, unless they were telling their friends about me, unless they were like rewarding me with a massage or something like that, or a foot rub. You know what I mean?
Knowing what you
so
know.
Always.
Sorry, go on.
No. Always doing. So love to me was an act to receive, for complete selfishness. And now, of course, you're going to ask me, what have I learned, right?
Yes, but I was going to also ask, like, knowing what you know now and knowing yourself in a very different way, would you call your past experiences love? Is that the right word for it?
No, I think they were like, I think not what the love is that I know now, because I know love to be the opposite way. In terms of action, but I think it was a defense mechanism, or a search to help me cope with my fears of being rejected, or being alone, or not being accepted. So they were really just defense mechanism actions, to protect myself. It wasn't love at all. Yeah,
I mean, I get that. I think like our survival, or the pain or the holes we're trying to fill, or the pain we're trying to keep at a distance because we're not ready to really invite it in and sit with it, you know, can make it really, can make a lot of, can allow there a lot of space between definitions of love, right? It can be like, even though on some part of us, it's like, something's not fully, you know, I'm doing something to negotiate or navigate my best self, if that makes sense. But yeah, it is a way for us, like the way we're all looking for the one thing and the way we look for it is very different and can be more damaging because there's so much fear leading it and there's so much disconnection leading it that it just keeps repeating that cycle of like, I think I shared this in the workshop around like, well, this was when we were talking about romantic love, where I was like, my first memory of romantic love was in a movie from the 50s, like An Affair to Remember. And I would watch it with my mom, who shared those kind of 50s ideas of love. And it was full of drama and pain and longing and just like this whole narrative of like the love, that the romantic love needs to be hard. It needs to you need to feel sad. You need to like have moments of despair and like self-pity and like it was like this torture. And you know, through my growing up, I would say until my early 30s, that's what I kept inviting in, like unconsciously, obviously. But I thought that love had to, romantic love, I will say, because areas of my life with my family and friends are just, I get it. And my dogs, I get it. But with romantic love, I mean, that's obviously changed in the last couple of years, but it was always me finding partners that almost demanded a distance, demanded a longing, a torture, a like, oh, like, look at me, my love is far away, or I have to do this, or there's all these barriers in between. It's like, it actually doesn't have to be that way. But I was so comfortable with that because then I got to perform the role of the woman being in love in this very romantic 50s kind of way without actually having to do the harder work, I think, of being in a consciously committed relationship, because both are so hard to do. Both require so much energy and so much like showing up, but just one is in the narrative of maybe misguided ideas. And then one is like what I think is a consciously committed relationship, which requires and demands so much, almost the same, but just with different like interpretations, if that's the word I could use. Anyway, it's so hilarious to think about this.
I wanted, I mean, I know we talk about, I suppose, romantic love being a partnership, right? A romantic sexual partnership of growth, of wife, husband, that kind of thing, girlfriend, boyfriend, you know, that kind of thing. Those are the things that are those. That's the thing that if we try to obtain, and if we don't have that, then we don't know what love is. And then, so this is kind of like a thing of like when I was my journey of like not being in that idea of a romantic love relationship, that I couldn't know about love then. And obviously, I've learned a lot that you don't need to be in that romantic relationship to learn about what love is. They're completely different. But why do you think that we put so much pressure on ourselves to think that that's the ultimate idea of love? And that if we don't have that, then we don't know what love is?
Oh, I think it just can lead into the idea that we are almost trained and programmed and taught that we have to go externally for things that already exist internally. And you know, and also I do want to say, like, we don't, both of us mean this conversation to be heteronormative. So it is about,
yeah, I was just going to say, yeah.
Unions, you know, and also non-monogamy. Like there's more than one way of being in committed conscious relationships. So that's my own disclosure. But I think it's this idea that we need to project a certain image that's taught, right? Like first of all, like if you think back even a few years, so much of the image of romantic partnerships were like heteronormative and also white and non-queer and all these kind of like ideas, and marriage was this the union that counted, so not the union with ourself but the union, or your family, but the union that meant success in one way. So it almost was like there's these narratives, right, that like it's about two halves becoming whole, and I'd rather it be like two holes in union and just like widening the circle, to use our own topic. So there's things we just grow up with, like we're all like this half of a thing looking for the other half of a thing, and until we find that we're just a half exploring and walking around, and that feels like a lot of pressure, and that feels like not true, and it feels like an actual invalidation of the wholeness that we are already exist within us. I mean, I was able to find so much of my own wholeness through my first dog, Luna. Like, and my relationship with her was a life-changing one. And you know, before that, John, who was my the greatest teacher in my life. And that's how I started like finding the holes in me, because people just, and dogs, creatures just let me become and unbecome without trying to fill in the gaps for me, or me needing somebody else to fill in the gaps, even though I tried. I spent years looking for that, right? Like, I know my soulmate is out there. We have so many. I have like 1,000. Everyone I meet is a soulmate, is a spirit that's kindred. So I think the world has just framed it easily around externalizing partnerships of romantic love, because it seems it's a good story to sell, right? It's easy. Everyone is also looking for partnership in whatever way, right? Everyone wants someone to lie in bed with, to have fun with, to express with. And it seems like it's just I don't know. That's a hard question. There's somebody out there who knows a lot more about this than I do, but I think it's just an easy story to sell. And, you know, we can get into marketing and communication and media literacy about all the ways the diamond industry, engagement industry, about it's all marketed for this, right? So it's like very sneakily done to make us think that this is the one thing we need to do.
I loved the movie Jerry Maguire. But the line from it, "You complete me," was at the time was like, oh, this is really romantic. What I've learned is it's the biggest falsehood ever, in that, like you said, we our wholeness meets somebody else's wholeness.
Right.
And if you're not whole and the other person isn't whole, then there's a lot of ducking and diving and mismatching, trying to put a round peg in a square hole, because of the fear of if I haven't achieved fatherhood, marriage, mortgages by a certain time in my life, then I'm a failure. Okay. And this has been my journey. And if anybody hears this, then I would like them to kind of know that these are things that we can unlearn. And my journey has been one of, I needed to love somebody to fill me. Right. Then I needed to, get sober. And go on this journey of being able to help people who couldn't give me romantic love back, which is other men who were struggling with substance use. And they couldn't pay me money. They couldn't buy me food. They couldn't do anything. They could just sit with me while I helped them, while I gave them an action with no expectation of anything in return. And it's taken me like 3 years of doing that. It took me up until about my 3rd year of sobriety, to build this basis of me being able to give an action towards someone with no expectation of return. And in that, my body started to feel different. I started to build some self-esteem, because I always thought that I was never worthy of love, and that I was a failure. And then all of a sudden, me taking these actions built some self-esteem, to the point where now, like, I'm over 4 years sober, and I suppose in the last 6 months, I think you've really noticed a change too in me, in that I could actually look in the mirror and say, hey, I'm proud of what I've accomplished. For the first time, I started to get into a place of actually learning that taking care of myself, self-care, self-love, were not these words of a egotistical, tree hugging, hippie kind of granola eating, oh, love yourself, that kind of stuff. it became, which is my old idea of what I thought self-love was. And to the point now where, you know, and it was a hard thing for me to kind of say that self-love wasn't selfish. But it took me to get to that point where now I'm starting to understand that different ideas and different notions about romantic love, about partnership love, about business love. And it's been a journey. It's not something that I thought I knew what love was.
Right.
It's something that I know that love is always changing. It's energy, it's kindness, it's compassion, it's community, and it's always like changing.
State of being, right? Love, if we break it down, at least for me, is just our state of being, a state of being. And that doesn't come with conditions or expectations. It just comes with actually fully being in the present moment that is clear and without, right? Like just without fill in the blank of anything. And I think, you know, again, it comes to this idea of like externalizing it and finding it somewhere else when it's actually already in us, like it just is us. And if we see it as a state of being, then, and we fully, I mean, it's hard work, even just saying, even the practice of self-love, it's not like, oh, you understand it one day and then that's it, check. It changes because we're always evolving and transforming. So then our own abilities to show up for love and our own state of beings changes and evolves and transforms. And then who comes into our life? Like, it's also, you know, the way I love my business partner is not the way I love my romantic partner. And the way I receive love for them and the way they love me back is not the same. And the way with my friends or my dog or my niece and my nephew, like, it's love is the state of being. And it just with each person on, I'm going to get into vibrations, but it has this frequency that we connect with, and that changes almost the song that we dance, right? So the way I dance with you as my business partner is different from the way I dance with my 3-year-old, you know, or my romantic partner, on all these different kinds of ways, which is so beautiful and so freeing, and also is aligned with all of us and the complexities of love. And I want to say one more thing, actually, because I think too, there's this idea of around like meeting a romantic partner in a monogamous kind of way is like, you're done but you have to be all this way for this one person and fit this one image. And that causes so much pressure because we are so complex and layered, and we can't, I'm going to say can't, but that might not be true. Like, it's a lot of pressure to have one person in our life meet all the needs of us. And I think that's almost a bit, I'm going to venture to say, selfish and misguided to say, well, I married you, or I'm in a committed relationship with you, or we're living together, so you better fill all these things about me, where it's a lot of pressure. And that's where you find the miscommunication happening, right?
You know, what's funny is that as you're talking about, like, you know, our relationship as business partners, and, you know, we're close and love each other. And then the idea of that, like, you know, you have a romantic partner, I have a romantic partner. And I thought about like last week when we were together.
Why did you say that out loud?
And I thought about when we were together the other day, and I had this chance to go and see, you know, my romantic partner for a coffee, and I shot off so fast.
Oh, like my coat wasn't even on, and you're like, see you. But in all fairness, I left you high and dry at the museum last year because I'm like, nope, gotta go. 20 minutes to get home. Like, and that's like, I think that's the excitement and the newness of like exploring these romantic loves with people, and then also the solidity. Is that a word? Of
solidification,
partner, friendship, partnership, however you want to call it. Like, nope, gotta go. And there's like there's freedom, there's beauty in being able to honor that and like have fun with it without taking it personally, without being, oh, Nick left me at this, that'd be like, why are you still here? Catch that bus, you're gonna be late. Like that, there's such this playfulness and joy that comes with these different kinds of states of being love-wise that I mean, what does it come down to is like that childness wonder is and excitement is so beautiful. Like when I think of my nephew and my niece and their curiosity, and they're like always in a state of awe and appreciation, and like, okay, like that's what I think being present fully looks like, because the noise shuts down, right? The fear goes away for a second, and we're just present. I think like that's a really beautiful thing to witness. And I think you and I've witnessed each other like fully in the fear, like it almost feels like purging, like there's a wave of purging and it comes because the fear is just so real. And I mean, and that's the thing, that's another important piece for people to remember, is like all of it requires patience and your own tenderness to yourself, and not believing all the thoughts that are not gentle, because fear is a real thing.
It is. And I think that as you know, as you were just talking for the last couple of minutes, it gives me so much excitement to be able to talk to men, particularly the men that I like. I'm looking forward to talking to with Tender is the New Tough, and the projects that we have coming up, is that, you know, we these set ideas of love change, and they are so playful, and it doesn't matter how old you are, you know, you can still have those tingly feelings, those fun things, those joyful things. I think, and that's what it is this universe is built for us to feel joy, you know. And I think that by being able to express some vulnerability around the topic of love, which is something else that we're I know you're writing up about these topics, you know, things that are hard to talk about. Why is love so hard to talk about, particularly, you know, like with regards to the masculine environments that I've been involved in?
Having like men tell each other that they love each other, like why not? Or like, you know, or me telling my girl like, oh, I love you, and not having some person, oh, like, look at you, little, like always these like snide remarks, like, oh, if I love somebody, if I hold my girl's hand, or if we work arm in arm, then we are this thing that people kind of label. Or, you know, there's so much you know, there's so much assumptions about all of this thing. And that if you, as, you know, an ex hockey player, tell your ex teammate that you like, why wouldn't you tell somebody that you like? Everyone wants to hear that. It doesn't mean anything other than that you are seeing and appreciating the existence of somebody. And why is this even a conversation we have to have? Like, say it. Yeah. Right? What it asks of us is, I mean, the whole point of Tender is the New Tough and like creating these spaces of talk is because we get to talk about it and we get to be uncomfortable about it, but at the same, and the world continues. Like, you're not going to implode, you know. And this is coming from me, who like couldn't say I love you to my brother, who's like one of my favorite people of all time. Like, I couldn't say I love you to him, or to my best friend from when I was 8 years old to like, I couldn't, because I thought if I say I love you, then I'm probably you know, the world will end, or I won't get it back, or they'll die, you know, based on my own like guilt and trauma. Like, there was such this like attachment to saying it that meant I'm going to be discovered as a, you know, or revealed as not me, and whatever that means. So yeah, there is so much, like, I think fear, and again, learning around needing to guard yourself, right? That's what it might come down to too, is this need to protect, or thinking that the way we survived is a personality trait when it's not. It's actually a trauma response. So what you needed to do before is not maybe part of who you are, but was a chapter in your story of how you needed to survive. And that could have looked like shutting down. I mean, it did for me. It looked like, I'm not even going to try for a second to touch that. So I'm going to do all the things to keep really far away from any comfort of or notion of love, you know? And the only way I could start that process was through a dog, because there was no threat there. There was no threat, and I couldn't receive it from humans. So let me meet this little creature who needed my love. And then she flipped that on me real quick, because it became about me realizing I needed my own love, right? So anyway, that's all.
I think it's really, I think I love you, such powerful words to be able to tell somebody. I tell it to my male friends all the time. I think that unlearning these ideas that by telling someone that you love them, it's homophobic or it's weak, I think are easy conversations to have. And in it, we can change perspectives, which is we're doing. And I'm really excited about that. I think that learning self-care and self-love makes me in a position where I can all of a sudden recognize that I can give love to somebody with no expectation in return, but also knowing that I'm worthy of the love that I give. Now, this is all new language to me that has been developed over the last few months, and I'm so excited that again that we can work with people to kind of unlearn these things, learn what the words mean, learn how they feel in the body, and be able to kind of give people chances for to express these feelings in new ways, which I'm really, really excited about. I don't know if I had another question. I'm just trying to wrap things up.
What was your idea, like, if you had to define it, which I don't think is possible or important, but what's your understanding of love now? Maybe I'll say that. What's your understanding of love now?
I think my understanding of love now is to create a basis of learning that you can love someone with no expectation of anything in return, to create a basis of self-respect, self-esteem, and self-love, where then you can see in yourself that you are worthy to receive the love that you give. So it's kind of like these parts of this flow, which is where I am now today, where I know that I'm worthy of receiving love, and it comes in all different kind of faces. But I think that's kind of where my version of love is right now.
Yeah.
But it started with selfless acts, which built self-esteem, which built self-love, which built this idea that I'm worthy of the love that I can give.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It also requires practice, right? I mean, again, it's not this thing, a theory that just exists here. It exists inside of us, and it does, like anything else in our life, require practice, and it requires a bit of misstep and a bit of bounce back. And that's everything's just an extension of the way we love ourselves. And this is like a thing that is true to me. And so when we teach or we talk around boundaries and self-care, like the first thing is like, well, how are you going to say yes to yourself today? How are you going to show yourself love today? And it doesn't have to be like, oh, it could be, I'm going to drink a glass of water because, I haven't actually had a glass of water. I've been working nonstop or drinking things that weren't like, that's like this small steps of practice of no, and then from there everything just extends. So when you are in relation in whatever ways with somebody else, you're seeing things from, hey, did you drink a glass of water today? It can be that simple, right? It doesn't have to be these grandiose kind of acts. Because the thing about love is that it is extraordinary in itself, right? To love, to be loved, to be of love in itself is extraordinary. Like if you think about it, it's extraordinary. So we don't have to go look out anywhere else for extraordinary acts, because just the fact that we are in relation to the earth, to each other, to animals, to trees, people, that's extraordinary in itself. So I think that's all I'm going to say.
Okay, I think we're just coming to the end of our time. So I'm just going to kind of give a little kind of a preview of what October is, which is this idea of, the uncertainty around what's going on with the pandemic, with lockdowns, with our work, with relationships, with all is that we have been able to collect from the beginning of the kind of pandemic to now ideas, processes, strategies, and tools that we can now bring into October, and start thinking of ways that we can harvest the things that we've learned to kind of bring us into the days getting darker out there.
Yeah,
Yeah. Do you want to say anything about it?
I mean, it's just, I think what's important right now is continuing the widening of our circles and the communities that have been already co-created with all of us, is that there's no like limit, there's no expiration on it. And I think it might be important to push it, like dance a little bit on the edge of what's been created and continue that growth. And I mean, what I knew in March is so different than what I know now, not only about myself, but how I communicate, how I see things, what's needed of me, what I need of myself. So if it's happening for me, I'm going to wager that it's happening for a lot of people. And it's this continuum of learning and discovering. And again, like, we don't actually have to do it alone. We don't. So I think that seems the theme for October is, let us harvest this knowledge and wisdom and all these things together, and kind of create this space for the coming months of, again, like uncertainty, of darkness, of cold, of, like literally and metaphysically, right? It could feel that way. So I think let us continue to widen what we've already built.
Perfect way to end it. Thank you so much, Melissa. See you later. And I love you, and be good. And everybody at What's On at Elephant and Castle Facebook page, we love you. And see you on Thursday at 11 for our first Widening Our Circle gathering for October. All right. See everybody later. Be good and safe.